Lightsabers are perhaps the single most fascinating aspect of the Star Wars universe. We've covered them at length on the channel, everything from the different variants to the color meanings, and even the weapon's storied history. But one aspect we've never done a deep dive on is the lightsaber hilt. Every Force user, Jedi, Sith, or something in between, has constructed a one-of-a-kind hilt to represent who they are or how they fight. With that said, today we're going over the stories behind the 10 most unique lightsaber hilt designs. Mace Windu. The story of Mace Windu's lightsaber actually originates behind the scenes. A longtime Star Wars fan, Samuel L. Jackson was stoked when he landed the role of Mace Windu in The Phantom Menace, but it wasn't until the Battle of Geonosis in Attack of the Clones that we would see Mace engage in lightsaber combat. Wishing to stand out in the massive arena battle, and feeling like, quote, the second baddest Jedi in the universe, Samuel L. Jackson directly asked George Lucas if he could have a purple-bladed lightsaber.
I figure out who we had to talk to about your lightsaber color.
Oh, well, good guys are green and blue, bad guys are red. That's just the way it works.
There's no purple left?
You might get purple.
In terms of in-universe hilt design, Windu's was built to the highest standards, emphasizing precision and quality. The weapon incorporated a golden electrum finish, reserved only for the most senior of council members, as well as the signature amethyst kyber crystal. Darth Sidious. Not only is it one of the sleekest designs in all of Star Wars, but Darth Sidious's lightsaber was intentionally constructed to be as insulting to the Jedi Order as possible. How can a lightsaber be insulting, you may ask? Well, let me explain. A young Palpatine sought to create the most finely crafted and elegant lightsaber he possibly could. In the construction of the weapon under his Sith master, Darth Plagueis, Sidious used a mix of the extremely expensive gold-colored metal called electrum and the nearly indestructible alloy known as frick. The use of electrum in particular was meant to deeply offend the Jedi Order, as, like we mentioned earlier, only the most skilled and highest-ranking Jedi Masters like Mace Windu were permitted to use electrum. In addition, Palpatine used intricate designs and detailing on his sabers to show off his vast wealth and mock the Jedi Order for not being able to sense him in the Force, when he was right under their noses the entire time. Despite believing that lightsaber combat was weak compared to the dark side of the Force, the Sith Lord knew that one day he would have to use it, and wished to downright embarrass the Jedi he would eventually face, taking immense pleasure in doing so. Count Dooku. While plenty of other Jedi and Sith have utilized curved lightsabers throughout Star Wars canon and legends, Count Dooku was one of the first on-screen to introduce and popularize the design. He simply did it the best. As a young Jedi, Dooku set aside the first lightsaber he had used as a Jedi Padawan under the tutelage of Yoda, wishing to create a weapon he felt would be superior. After deeply studying the Jedi archives, Dooku had created his new personalized design. Dooku's new lightsaber had no connection to the fashion of the time period, or to his master. It was made specifically to suit his dueling technique of lightsaber form 2, Makashi, as the weapon favored long, elegant moves and deftness of hand. Yoda, in fact, disapproved of Count Dooku's lightsaber because the curved hilt was a duelist's weapon designed to off-balance other lightsaber wielders at a time in history when most Jedi believed the Sith to be extinct. As such, it only gave him an advantage over other Jedi. Combine this with his dedication to Makashi, a lightsaber form dedicated to defeating an opponent in lightsaber combat, and it was cause for concern for Yoda. Dooku believed that the Sith were still operating in secret, and that the Jedi should be prepared for their threat. Yoda disagreed, so it seemed as though Dooku only had a desire to defeat other Jedi and prove himself, which the Order frowned upon. The combination of Dooku's mastery of Makashi and the way his lightsaber complemented it made him one of the deadliest swordsmen of his time period. Real quick, we just wanted to let you know that the latest Red 5 merchandise is now available at red5.shop. There you can find a vast selection of Red 5 shirts, mugs, hats, stickers, and so much more in a variety of different designs. If you sign up for our channel membership, you can save up to 20% off on your order, depending on your level. Once again, that's red5.shop. The link is in the description. Back to the video. Darth Vader. While you may think that there isn't anything special about one of the first lightsabers to ever appear in Star Wars, that assumption couldn't be further from the truth. Vader constructed his infamous Sith weapon after Obi-Wan Kenobi took his Jedi weapon and left him for dead on the lava banks of Mustafar. He did use the green lightsaber of Jedi Master Karak Infilla for a time, but that wouldn't suffice in the long term. Vader's new lightsaber was similar to his first Jedi lightsaber seen in Attack of the Clones, but was much larger compared to many other lightsabers. The reason for this was simply to allow Vader to better grip it with his cybernetic hands and fingers. After losing his limbs, the Sith Lord had to completely relearn to fight, utilizing his increased strength and hatred to fuel his strikes. Vader's lightsaber was also uniquely equipped with a dual-phase function. Dual-phase lightsabers utilized 2 or more kyber crystals, allowing its blade to be extended or shortened in the middle of combat. It's honestly a shame we've yet to see this on screen. Darth Vader was constantly fine-tuning and upgrading his lightsaber for maximum blade power and stability. It was one of the few things he still cared about in his miserable existence as a Sith Lord. The Darksaber. Among all the lightsabers in Star Wars, few have played as significant a role as the Darksaber. In terms of iconic lightsaber blades, the Darksaber is completely unique. Not only did the Darksaber command the respect of all Mandalorians as a symbol of leadership, but it also featured one of the most interesting hilts in all of Star Wars. Created by the first Mandalorian to ever be inducted into the Jedi Order, Tar Vizsla, and later wielded by the likes of Pre Vizsla, Darth Maul, Bo-Katan Kryze, Moff Gideon, and Din Djarin. Almost all lightsabers have cylindrical hilts, but the Darksaber stood apart with its rectangular design. Furthermore, the blade of the Darksaber itself was more like a sword than a cylinder, with a sharp cutting edge. Inquisitor spinning lightsabers. Almost every Imperial Inquisitor lightsaber featured a similar double-bladed design to Darth Maul's lightsaber, but with a simple twist. The central handle of the hilt allowed both blades to spin around rapidly. But why exactly did Inquisitor lightsabers spin? It's pretty simple. Inquisitors weren't nearly as powerful as the Sith Lords they served, about on the level of a lower-tier Jedi Knight. Therefore, they relied on intimidation to aid them in combat, with their spinning lightsabers assisting them in weaponizing fear itself. For a Jedi hunter like the Inquisitor, the spinning lightsaber served as a way to frighten opponents and deflect any form of direct attack. On some occasions, this function was known to catch opponents off balance. While the Inquisitors used this feature to intimidate and bully many of the galaxy's average citizens, it was often merely for show. Most seasoned Jedi left after Order 66 knew how to combat their flashy moves. A powerful enough Jedi opponent could simply permanently sever the weapon in half and leave the Inquisitor vulnerable. They also gave the Inquisitors a chance to escape a confrontation, allowing the Inquisitors to use them like helicopter blades to fly away and live to fight another day. Gunji's wooden lightsaber. While Gunji's lightsaber looks almost identical to a standard lightsaber, the material used for it is far from ordinary. According to Hu Yang, the lightsaber professor, Gunji's choice of using Bylark wood in the construction of his hilts, though not unheard of, differed greatly from the standard choice of a metal alloy. It was a rare choice in material, just as Wookiees like Gunji were rare among the Jedi Order. But Gunji isn't the only Jedi to use a rare organic material when constructing his lightsaber. Let's give a brief bonus mention to another. Tenel Ka Jo is a character who has faded away into the obscurity of Star Wars legends, but her first lightsaber remains as one of the coolest in the vast lore of a galaxy far, far away. Tenel Ka was a member of Luke Skywalker's new Jedi Order, and instead of using traditional metal, or even the less common wood like Gunji for her lightsaber hilt, Tenel Ka used an enormous tooth from a Rancor as the hilt of her saber. And if that wasn't cool enough, she also carved battle etchings into it. How much more badass can a saber design get? Kylo Ren's unstable crossguard. A young Ben Solo solidified his turn to the dark side and new position as the rightful leader of the Knights of Ren by killing both their former leader and another one of Luke Skywalker's Jedi students with his Jedi lightsaber. Aboard the Knights of Ren's ship, Ben then took his blue Jedi Kyber crystal and turned it red in the process known as bleeding. Ben's eyes turned red and yellow as the crystal exploded, sending waves of energy throughout the ship. As he dealt with the pain, Ben Solo was haunted by images of his former master, Luke Skywalker, his parents, Han Solo and Leia, as well as Chewbacca, Lando Calrissian, and Luke's other Jedi students. The resulting blade was so unstable that it burned the now Kylo Ren's hand when he tried to ignite it, so he was forced to make modifications to his lightsaber. Adding vents to either side of the handle, his new crossguard lightsaber was based on an ancient design that dated back to the Great Scourge of Malachor, an ancient battle fought between the Jedi Order and Sith Empire. Kylo Ren's unstable crossguard has a unique hilt for several reasons. For one thing, he was the first character in Star Wars canon to popularize the crossguard design. His cracked kyber crystal also adds instability to his blade, a feature few other lightsabers have. Additionally, the hilt of his saber differs from the traditional refined design, as some of the wiring is outside the hilt instead of inside. Ezra Bridger's lightsaber blaster. Ezra Bridger's lightsaber blaster hybrid almost seems to mock Obi-Wan Kenobi's disapproving view of blasters in Star Wars by marrying one with a saber.
So uncivilized.
Not as clumsy or random as a blaster. An elegant weapon for a more civilized age.
Bridger did not have the luxury of training in peace due to the Empire constantly chasing him and the Ghost Crew, causing him to include a stunning blaster in the design of his hilt for when his lightsaber fighting skills inevitably failed him. Darth Vader would destroy the weapon on Malachor, and Bridger would replace it with a more traditional green-bladed one, reflecting his growing confidence and proficiency with the weapon. Stellan Gios' foldable crossguard. Although it's yet to appear on screen, Stellan Gios' foldable crossguard lightsaber design deserves more recognition. Coming from the High Republic novels, Stellan Gios' lightsaber is an enormous improvement over Kylo Ren's crossguard design. Unlike Kylo Ren's lightsaber, the crossguards on Gios' lightsaber folded up when not in use, proving it to be much easier to carry. Furthermore, when unfolded, Gios' quillins guarded his hand from slipping up into the extra blades on his saber, for not only was there a crossguard made of plasma, but also one made of metal. But that does it for our list of the 10 most unique lightsaber hilt designs. Which one is your favorite? Let me know in the comments. Lightsabers are highly coveted weapons for several reasons. When Luke Skywalker first held Anakin's lightsaber, Obi-Wan Kenobi told him it was an
Elegant weapon for a more civilized age.
Ever since then, the mystery and lore around the weapons has only grown tenfold. Today we will examine every single lightsaber type and variant throughout Star Wars canon and legends. We begin with the standard single-bladed lightsaber we all know and love. What's there really to say that hasn't been said? The standard laser sword consisted of a plasma blade powered by a naturally grown kyber crystal that was emitted from a usually metal hilt and could be shut off at will. It was a weapon that required skill and training and was greatly enhanced when used in conjunction with the Force, being synonymous with both the Jedi and Sith. The Force Saber was an ancient Rakatan invention developed 25,000 years before the Skywalker saga, in which powerful dark side energy was channeled through laboratory-grown Ebon crystals in glowing energy blades. Force sabers, like later models of lightsaber, came in a variety of colors. Because of its ties to the dark side, ancient Jedi were at risk of succumbing to it with each and every use of the Force saber. The Proto-Saber would later be developed and used by the Jedi Order based on many of the basic principles of the Force Saber's technology. The main difference between Proto-Sabers and later lightsabers was that the hilt was connected via cable to an external power pack due to limitations in technology at the time. These lightsabers had limited operational time, and the mobility of the user was restricted by the cable linking the hilt of the weapon to the power supply. The Retro Saber, however, was used by one Jedi much later on, improving proto-saber technology with modern materials and engineering. The resulting weapon greatly resembled the original proto-sabers, but far exceeded their abilities. A retro saber was just as potent as modern lightsabers. The primary advantage was that modern belt-mounted power packs allowed for a brief power surge, creating a more powerful blade for a short period of time. A dual-phase lightsaber was a lightsaber that contained 2 or more kyber crystals, allowing its blade length to be extended or shortened in the middle of combat. Darth Vader's lightsaber was an example of one. This weapon type allowed a wielder to rotate crystals into a new alignment with the push of a button to change the length of the lightsaber's blade. This lightsaber variant was also considered by the Jedi to be outdated by the time of the Clone Wars. It was seen as an artifact from a more violent time period. Training lightsabers were non-lethal weapons used to practice lightsaber combat. Training lightsabers of various kinds were often used by Jedi younglings in the temple on Coruscant before they underwent the gathering and built a weapon of their own. It was also possible for normal lightsabers to be tuned down so they could be used in this fashion. Shoto lightsabers were scaled lightsabers whose blades were considerably shorter than normal. They were used by shorter combatants like Yoda, whose stature made it impractical to wield a full-sized lightsaber, and also as offhand weapons for duelists who employed twin-bladed techniques as part of Jarkai, like Ahsoka Tano. Some would also opt to use 2 Shoto lightsabers in a dagger-like fashion, such as the 10th Brother Inquisitor. Tonfa lightsabers, sometimes referred to as guard Shotos, were a rare perpendicular gripped type of short lightsaber with a second handle extending from the main hilt at 90 degrees. Though it could be gripped by either hilt, when wielded with the perpendicular blade, it was especially useful at blocking other lightsabers. Maris Brood, a once Jedi Padawan, took to using a pair when she crossed paths with Starkiller. The double-bladed lightsaber, also referred to as a saber staff, consisted of a single hilt with an emitter at both ends, resulting in a weapon that was wielded in a similar manner to a traditional staff. The double-bladed lightsaber was first invented by Dark Lords of the Sith Empire and was far less common among Jedi due to its primary purpose, allowing for a faster rate of attack and unleashing a rapid assault with minimum movement. Special training was required to wield the weapon effectively, with those attempting to use it without such discipline likely to bisect or impale themselves. The hinged double-bladed lightsaber featured a hinge in the center of the hilt. It folded for easier storage, and one or both blades could be activated while the weapon was collapsed, the parallel blades being able to trap the blade of another lightsaber. Some Jedi Temple guards carried this style of lightsaber, as did Jedi General Pong Krell, who owned 2 of them. The lightsaber pike had 2 different variations. The first was essentially just a double-bladed lightsaber. It was the most common weapon of the Jedi Temple guards. The second version of lightsaber pike resembled a spear in many aspects, with a far longer handle. At the end of the handle was a lightsaber blade that was shorter and thicker than a normal one. The weapon was often longer than the wielder's body and could keep enemies at a distance, giving the advantage of a longer reach. The double-bladed spinning lightsaber was specifically designed for the Imperial Inquisitors and was capable of both single and double blades, and could spin in a circular motion when both blades were emitted. The weapon suffered from a number of design flaws. If given the opening, an opponent could cut through the disc from the inside or outside of the ring, causing the weapon to fly apart if spinning. You could also willingly use them to fly and escape an encounter. Curved lightsabers, like Count Dooku's, were often seen during the prime of Form 2 lightsaber combat. The use of curved hilts allowed for more precise movements, as well as near-perfect flexibility when engaged in lightsaber-to-lightsaber combat. The hilt's curvature also gave the wielder more power when delivering overhand strikes, and would change the angle of the attacks by the merest fraction of a degree. Unfortunately, curved hilt lightsabers were generally more difficult to use in blaster bolt deflection. Split sabers were a type of double-bladed lightsaber that could split into 2 separate lightsabers, allowing a user to have the option of switching between a double blade or dual wielding with Jarkai. The Darksaber was a one-of-a-kind weapon constructed by the only Mandalorian to be inducted into the Jedi Order. It had a unique blade that was shorter than that of most lightsabers and shaped like a traditional sword. Its overall profile was distinctly Mandalorian, with an angular pommel, handguard, and split-shaped blade emitter, all of which was made out of Beskar. It was respected by Mandalorians as a symbol of leadership. The crossguard lightsaber was an ancient lightsaber variant with 3 blades, a primary blade and 2 vents just below it. The blades of the secondary emitters were produced by a specialized power modulator that utilized a splitter to produce 2 very short blades. During the High Republic era, some featured a physical crossguard made from metal without having any additional energy blades. The forked lightsaber was a more rare variant of the crossguard, only with 1 smaller blade. Kylo Ren's crossguard lightsaber was slightly different, as it served the purpose of channeling extra energy produced by its unstable and cracked kyber crystal. The broadsaber's hilt made a blade that was broader and flatter than a standard lightsaber's cylindrical blade, and as such gave it a profile that was closer to that of a traditional metal sword. The broadsaber provided a larger overall surface for the blade, while losing the advantages of an omnidirectional cutting edge. Saber canes were a simple variation on the standard lightsaber, merely being a hilt concealed by the handle of a cane. The primary purpose of the saber cane was to act as a concealed weapon, a convenient place to hide a lightsaber. Light whips generally functioned on the same principles and mechanics as lightsabers. However, rather than the straight blades emitted by standard lightsabers, light whips featured longer, flexible blades that often exceeded several meters. Instead of 1 large crystal, they contained multiple small crystals, and the plasma in the blade had no cell barriers to keep it straight. The flexible nature meant that light whip users had to take more care during use than when wielding a lightsaber, as the wielder had to pay attention to where the tendrils were going so that they did not lose a limb. The lightsaber blaster hybrid was a type of lightsaber hilt equipped with a blaster. The short-range stun bolts it could fire caused some shock, but were not as effective as a blaster or lightsaber blade. Ezra Bridger used one to make up for his lack of skill early on in his training. The lightsaber rifle was a type of rifle designed to work in conjunction with a standard lightsaber. Once a lightsaber was properly loaded into an open slot as ammunition, a lightsaber rifle could produce an overwhelmingly powerful and destructive beam of energy. The weapon could fire at least 5 shots before the lightsaber being used as fuel melted beyond usage, at which point the empty rifle began to smoke. One was kept at the Jedi Archives and was used by Jocasta Nu after Order 66. The Far Killer took this even further. It was a one-of-a-kind sniper rifle which used lightsaber technology and allowed its user to take out targets from 100 kilometers away. Its user and creator, both Jedi, were declared apostates by the High Council as a result and exiled. The sickle-bladed lightsaber, according to legend, was wielded by the Sith Lord Darth Noctis. Unlike more traditional lightsabers, this variant featured a curved blade, making it resemble a metal sickle. A lightsaber gauntlet attached to the user's arm, and when activated, emitted 1 or more lightsaber blades. The idea of a lightsaber gauntlet was a concept designed for Revenge of the Sith, and was nearly wielded by Plo Koon. Light foils were small and elegant energy swords based upon lightsaber design. Each one was a work of art, lightweight and balanced. It was wielded with one hand, as its petite and elegantly designed handles attested. Non-force sensitive nobles in parts of the galaxy used light foils in a similar way to metal foils for fencing. The Light Club, also known as a Great Lightsaber, contained special focusing crystals and power systems, enabling it to project a blade up to 3 meters in length. These large lightsabers were generally used only by beings of immense stature. Gork, a mutated Gamorrean guard, and Dark Jedi used such a weapon. The lightsaber Parasol was a Sith lightsaber created by Koru, a female Sith who led a bandit group. It functioned as a single-bladed lightsaber when she used only the hilt. With its attached Parasol auxiliary, it produced multiple red plasma blades in a manner that resembled an umbrella, particularly when she spun it to create a shield. A flicker phase blade was a lightsaber that had been modified to allow its blade to ignite and extinguish at random intervals. Although combat with flicker phase blades could be more difficult than an ordinary lightsaber, it was challenging for an opponent to effectively block the weapon, a fact which caused the Jedi and Sith to generally view them as dishonorable and unsportsmanlike, much like the lightsaber form Trikata, which involved powering a lightsaber on and off to bypass an opponent's blade. A lava crystal lightsaber contained a special lightsaber crystal that could be found on volcanic planets like the hellish world of Mustafar. It generated a blade that resembled lava. The crystal itself was less focused and concentrated than normal crystals, Therefore, lava itself was generated from the extreme heat of the dense, heavy blade, creating bits of flame and lava that sometimes splashed and dripped out of the blade itself. A bifurcating, cyclical ignition pulsed lightsaber had the ability to be activated underwater with the help of two crystals. Without special modifications, a normal lightsaber submerged underwater would short out and would require minor repairs before working again. Invented by Jedi Master Kit Fisto and recorded in the Great Jedi Holocron, this modification became widely used by Jedi Knights during the Clone Wars, where battles were fought on the water worlds of Kamino and Mon Cala. Luke Skywalker would discover that his father's lightsaber was waterproof, adding the feature to his own weapon and making it a part of regular design for the students of his Jedi Academy. The Tage Proto-Blade was a plasma weapon created by the Tage Corporation to replicate a lightsaber. The Proto-Blade took the form of a gauntlet. When activated, it ejected an edged physical blade, energized with plasma by a power source, giving the blade a yellow glow. Despite its lethality, the Proto-Blade was not as energy efficient as the lightsabers it was modeled after and required an external power supply. Eric Ismarin might take the cake when it comes to insane lightsaber variants. This guy had 8 lightsabers surgically implanted into his body, along with subdermal armor pads which protruded from his elbows, forearms, wrists, and knees, almost like lightsaber armor or even skin. Lastly, we must give an honorable mention to the octo-bladed lightsaber, wielded only by LEGO Darth Maul. But do let us know down in the comments which rare lightsaber variant is your favorite and which you would choose to wield if you were a Sith or a Jedi. Sounding like no other weapon in the galaxy, lightsabers were used for thousands of years before the age of the Galactic Republic. As with any technology, they evolved over time into the iconic plasma weapons we know and love. So, what were the first lightsabers like? How did they change over thousands of years into the modern weapons? Let's talk about it. Before we even get to the first lightsabers, we have to talk about what came before. Much of this content will come from the Legends continuity, as canon has given us very little when it comes to the origins of the iconic weapons. About 36,000 years before the events of A New Hope, the ancient Jedi, known as the Jedi, wielded metal swords called Force-imbued blades. First conceived on the planet Typhon, which is where Grogu sat upon the Seeing Stone in The Mandalorian, Force-imbued blades became the signature weapon of the ancient Jedi for approximately 10,000 years. Typically, each blade was created by a Jedi after advancing past the rank of Padawan and becoming a Jedi Journeyer or a Jedi Ranger of the Order. An initiate would select a bar of high-carbon metal, typically Durasteel, and would hammer the bar into a blade. As it was forged, the force was channeled into the blade, altering the molecular structure of the metal into a reinforced lattice. This lattice both hardened the blade and sharpened the edge, as well as prepared the blade for the next step. Once the blade was forged, an initiate would place a crystal into the hilt of the blade, and then would marry the lattices of the crystal and the blade together. This was accomplished by submerging oneself deep into the force, and then meditating on the blade and crystal until blade, crystal, and smith became one. Once the lattices were married, the wielder would channel energy through the crystal and into the blade until it began to glow with energy, signifying that the blade had been permanently infused with the Force. The forging process was both physically and mentally taxing. Smiths ran the risk of shattering the blade, crystal, or both when channeling energy, whether due to imperfections in the lattices or inadequate skill. The blades were preternaturally strong and sharp, being capable of cutting effortlessly through most materials. The Force-imbued blade saw widespread use throughout the Despot War in the Typhon system. It was also used during the Force Wars between the Ashla, or followers of the light side, and Bogan, who embraced the dark. The swords were used up until the First Great Schism, which produced the Exiles that eventually founded the Sith Empire. Before we get to the first of the energy-based blades, we quickly wanted to let you know about our new channel membership. If you enjoyed the content we put out and would like to help us make more, head to the link in the description or join button on our channel's homepage. You'll even get access to some pretty cool perks. The The first energy-based blade was called the Force Saber. It wasn't created by the Jedi, but by the Rakata around 24,000 BBY. The ancient amphibious humanoid species formed the Rakatan Infinite Empire and were very technologically advanced. Long-term use of the dark side of the Force corrupted their society and turned them into a race of merciless warriors that used their potent Force-powered technologies to conquer and enslave every other species they came across. They were characterized by their cruelty, savagery, and arrogance, known to strip entire planets of their resources, terraform worlds to fit their own shifting needs, and kill entire slave workforces. Their invention, the Force Saber, channeled powerful dark side energy through laboratory-grown Ebon crystals and was ignited like the later lightsabers. Force Hounds were required to construct these weapons, Force-sensitive servants of the Rakatan. Some Force Sabers, the ones used by Force Hounds, were similar to standard lightsabers, while others, used by Rakata themselves, were similar to lightsaber pikes, with much longer handles. Force sabers, like later models of lightsaber, came in a variety of colors: purple, red, blue, orange, and yellow. Because of its ties to the dark side, any Jedi were at risk of succumbing to it with each and every use of the Force saber. During the Rakatan invasion of the Tython system, the Jedi Order showed signs of a great divide between those who wished to use the Force saber and those who wished not to. The Force saber could be considered a catalyst of the great divide between the light and dark sides of the Force. By 16,000 BBY, Jedi studies and research with frozen blaster technology yielded success as they developed a method to generate a focused beam of energy that arced in its path back to its source, creating a controlled energy circuit and leading to the first portable high-energy blades, the Proto-Sabers. However, these preliminary lightsabers were highly unstable and inefficiently guzzled energy from a belt-mounted power supply. They could only be used for a brief period of time before overheating. As a consequence of these falls, the first lightsabers were little more than ceremonial objects, seldom worn and much less utilized. The extreme lack of stability that plagued the weapon's early designs were gradually corrected through the ages, and the cumbersome and rarely used siege weapons gave way to elegant and much more commonly used iterations of Proto-Sabers. While these improved Proto-Sabers were far more stable than their ungainly predecessors, they still suffered from energy consumption issues, requiring the belt-worn power pack of previous generations. The power cable tended to restrict the wielder's movements in battle and prevented the usage of force-powered and long-range telekinetic saber combat, certainly no saber throws. Despite the shortcomings, the Proto-Sabers gained a superior advantage in hand-to-hand combat against heavily armored foes, and saw a great deal of use during the period of the 100-Year Darkness and Second Schism between the Jedi and Sith. It seems the early Dark Lords of the Sith Empire were ultimately responsible for the advancements of lightsabers, replacing the belt-mounted power pack with a power cell within the hilt. An internal superconductor was introduced, which transferred the returning looped energy from the negative charged flux aperture back into an internal power cell. With this modification, the power cell would only expend power when the energy loop was broken, such as when a lightsaber was cutting something, solving the power supply problem. According to the Tedran Jedi Holocron, the Sith also created the schematics for the first double-bladed lightsabers. Wielders of these original modern lightsabers include Carnus Mur, a dark Jedi who wielded a Proto-Saber, but later switched to a curve-hilted modern lightsaber. Mur also appears to have been one of the Sith Lords to establish the tradition of wielding lightsabers with synthetic red lightsaber crystals. If you didn't know, in Legends, Sith Lords opted for synth crystals, whereas in canon, they turned their natural Jedi Kyber crystals to red in a process called bleeding. By the time of the Sith Lords Malak and Revan, the tradition of using synthetic red crystals continued to be observed by virtually every noteworthy Sith Lord. By 5000 BBY, as the Great Hyperspace War began between the Galactic Republic and Sith Empire, the technological innovations pioneered by the Sith were brought to the Republic and the Jedi. However, the majority of Sith forces held to the use of Sith swords, while the Jedi continued to use the Proto-Sabers, as they had not yet had enough time to completely adapt and implement the new lightsaber designs. With the Sith defeat at the end of the war, modern lightsabers saw much wider adoption by the Jedi Order. By 4800 BBY, they were almost universally utilized by all Jedi. About 1,000 years later, the Jedi Order fought the Great Sith War against the followers of the Dark Lord of the Sith at this time, Exar Kun. Upon his ascension to Dark Lord of the Sith, Kun redesigned his Jedi lightsaber based on instructions hidden within an old Sith holocron, creating one of the earliest double-bladed lightsabers. While Exar Kun's insurrection ultimately failed, he did introduce the double-bladed lightsaber to the Jedi, and it began to see more widespread use during the period leading up to the Jedi Civil War, started by Darth Revan and Malak against the Old Republic. It's likely during this time that the dual-phase lightsaber was also created, which used 2 power crystals and allowed its blade length to be extended or shortened in the middle of combat. It was far less popular by the Clone Wars, but Darth Vader was known to utilize one. About 2,000 years later, in 1050 BBY, one of the most unique lightsabers was created, the Darksaber. Forged by Tar Vizsla, the first Mandalorian ever inducted into the Jedi Order, the weapon was uniquely sword-like in shape and had a crackling black blade. We've yet to learn much of the specifics when it comes to its creation, but the weapon went on to hold great significance for the Mandalorians as a symbol of leadership. By the time of the Clone Wars and Sith Rule of Two, lightsaber usage and technology remained largely unchanged over the 5,000 years since the Old Republic, although it should be noted that the usage of naturally formed kyber crystals from the caves of the planet Ilum became almost universal among all Jedi, causing the variety of lightsaber colors to drop, as the vast majority of crystals that formed on Ilum took on either a blue or green hue. Another development during this time was the introduction of the bifurcating cyclical ignition pulse lightsaber. This enabled the lightsaber to activate underwater with the help of 2 crystals. Without special modifications, a lightsaber submerged underwater would short out and would require minor repairs before working again. Jedi Master Kit Fisto recorded instructions on how to modify lightsabers to add the feature in a Jedi holocron. His modification became widely used by Jedi Knights during the Clone Wars, where battles were fought on the water worlds of Kamino and Mon Cala. With the Great Jedi Purge in 19 BBY, lightsabers became contraband, aside from the ones wielded by Vader and his Inquisitors, with many of the sites where Jedi traditionally collected lightsaber crystals razed or quarantined. Jedi were forced to refrain from drawing their lightsabers during this era, as openly displaying the traditional weapon would only draw attention, leading to many developing creative ways to hide the weapons in plain sight. But that's how lightsabers evolved over thousands of years and became the weapons we know and love today. Here's to hoping we learn more about their early developments in upcoming Star Wars projects like The Acolyte and James Mangold's movie that will tell the story of the first Jedi. But which era of lightsabers do you find to be the most fascinating? Let us know in the comments, and make sure to check out our lightsaber lore playlist in the description. At the heart of every lightsaber in Star Wars is a crystal, the power source that gives the weapon its colorful energy blade. Jedi and Sith used a variety of crystals to produce various colors, effects, and unique abilities, some more common and others more rare. Today, we attempt to cover them all. This is every single lightsaber crystal explained. First, we'll touch on the basic kyber crystal. This is by far the most common type of lightsaber crystal used by the Jedi and Sith, found on various planets across the galaxy. As part of their Jedi training, younglings were sent to the crystal cave of the ice planet of Ilum to seek their own kyber crystal. Its color will change within moments upon being picked up by a new wielder. That's because the crystal itself exhibited a sort of collective consciousness, verging on sentience, and would call out to a Force user through the Force. Like how in Harry Potter, the wand chooses the wizard, the kyber crystal chooses the Jedi. Kyber crystals were inherently attuned to the light side of the Force, and resisted any effort by dark side practitioners to use them in lightsabers. A Sith or Darksider could use a kyber crystal only by using the Force to dominate the crystal, bending it to their will. This process caused the crystal to bleed and turn a crimson red. It was also possible to heal or purify a bleeding crystal, resulting in it turning white, as seen with Ahsoka Tano's blades. Kylo Ren's lightsaber had a cracked kyber crystal, which generated an unstable blade. The excess power was vented out the sides, thus creating a crossguard-like design. Synth crystal. A synthetic kyber crystal, or synth crystal, as you can probably guess, was an artificial kyber crystal. Their synthetic nature made them highly unstable and explosive. In Star Wars Legends, before the concept of bleeding was introduced, the Sith all made use of synthetic crystals. Luke Skywalker even used one in the construction of his green lightsaber because of how hard kyber was to find during the reign of the Galactic Empire. Personally, I like the concept of bleeding a natural crystal better, but that's just personal preference. And I know it was disproved in a canon comic, but I just love the idea of Luke's green crystal being the one that once belonged to Qui-Gon Jinn, since Obi-Wan did hold on to it, but I digress. Adegan crystal. Commonly found in the Adegia system and on planets like Mygeeto, Adegan crystals were said to be force-reactive and could be infused with a small amount of a force-sensitive's power. There were said to be 5 types of Adegan crystal: Cathracite, Relicite, Danite, Mephite, and the rarest, Pontite. Barab ingot. Found on the Outer Rim world Barab 1, Barab ingots were found in clusters in the planet's mountains and were hot to the touch. They also glowed, and, when used in a lightsaber, created a powerful, fiery blade and made the entire lightsaber slightly radioactive. Christophsis crystal. Found on the crystalline planet Christophsis, an early flashpoint of the Clone Wars, the Jedi Order held Christophsis crystals in high regard. These pure crystals formed in the crystalline forests of the planet. A lightsaber blade created by Christophsis crystals amplified kinetic energy in a unique way, which resulted in powerful impacts. Think about Black Panther's suit. Kinda like that, but on a lightsaber. Dantari crystal. Found on the Outer Rim planet of Dantooine, which once housed a prominent Jedi temple, Dantari crystals used to be extremely popular. Some Jedi found such crystals within the eggs of the cave-dwelling Kinrath, a large species of arachnoid. Dragite gem. Small, dull, and brittle crystals known as Dragite gems were found in the Dulop mountain range of the world Mahali. They were one of the most brittle kyber crystals in existence and were hard to work into a lightsaber. However, when they were in a lightsaber, they emitted a loud hum and also produced a shockwave when striking a solid target. Ghost fire crystal. Usually found on the mountain peaks of various Outer Rim worlds, ghost fire crystals were a type of rare and entirely transparent crystal that grew from rocky foundations and formed precarious and nearly invisible spires of stone. When the crystals could be located and inserted into a lightsaber, they could produce a blade that was dim and translucent compared to the iridescent blades of other sabers, making it as difficult to detect as the crystals themselves. Lightsabers with ghost fire crystals also generated almost no sound and produced illusionary afterimages of the blade that followed the motions of the wielder, which disguised the true position of the blade while also disorienting one's opponent. Jedha crystal. Found on the moon of Jedha, Jedha crystals were treasured by Jedi and members of the Church of the Force. Lightsabers with Jedha crystals produced focused, potent blades. Following the destruction of Jedha City by the Death Star's super laser, some Jedha crystals were recovered from its ruins. Many of the recovered crystals were cracked and damaged, and those were referred to as cracked Jedha crystals. Unlike undamaged Jedha crystals, cracked Jedha crystals used in lightsabers produced unstable, ragged blades. Kimberstone. Found on the volcanic moon of Yenis, Kimberstones produced a non-lethal blade, and as such were initially excluded from use in lightsabers. However, a few Jedi would eventually come to use the stones in their non-lethal lightsabers, likely for training purposes. Krayt Dragon Pearl. The massive Krayt Dragon was the apex predator of Tatooine. During the course of their life, Krayt Dragons would eat stones to assist in digestion. Their corrosive digestive fluid would break down and eventually dissolve the rocks, forming pearls. These pearls could vary in size from palm-sized to larger than a humanoid's head, and could be found in a Krayt Dragon's stomach should one be able to kill it. A lightsaber equipped with one of these pearls emitted a very powerful and destructive blade that gave off a howling sound when ignited. Lordian Gemstone. Created by Force-sensitive Lordians during the Kans disorders, Lordian gemstones placed into a lightsaber allowed the wielder to predict their opponent's actions. Nishalarite Stone. Found on planets with strong magnetic fields, Nishalarite stones were dark gray or blue-black in color and produced dense blades that intensified when pointed toward the magnetic north of a planet. Seeker Crystal. When used in a lightsaber, Seeker Crystals formed a pink blade and allowed the user to detect nearby beings. When ignited, a blade produced by a Seeker Crystal attuned to the user in the Force and allowed them to sense danger from other beings hidden nearby, although it could not be used as a compass to find the origin of the danger. Sky Kyber. A pendant with a blue and white Sky Kyber crystal was given to Cassian Andor by Luthen Rail, who claimed it celebrates the uprising against the Rakatan invaders. It's unknown how it may be different from a standard Kyber crystal. Solari Crystal. The Solari Crystal was one of the oldest and most powerful lightsaber crystals of the Jedi Order. Solari crystals formed an extremely wide blade that was more efficient at blocking blaster bolts. These crystals made for powerful but demanding blades. For if a wielder's connection to the Force became too muddied by inner conflict, the crystal would not perform as well for them. Its owner had to always stay pure of heart for it to function. Saurian Crystal. Saurian crystals reflected light in a way that looked similar to fire. When used as a lightsaber crystal, Saurian crystals produced a blade that would release a surge of power each time it came into contact with something. Tainted Night Sister Crystal. A Tainted Night Sister Crystal was created by the Night Sisters to use in weaponry similar to that of lightsabers. The crystal was created if soaked in Dathomir's magical ichor, which prevented the crystal's connection to the Force. A blade created using the crystal emitted a putrid, choking green smoke. Thonton Crystal. A type of Kyber crystal rarely utilized at the core of a lightsaber, Thonton crystals were important due to their unique properties as healing aids, and were capable of assisting a Jedi healer in easing the pain of a patient, and therefore made their treatment easier. Varpaline Crystal. Found on the Outer Rim world Marilis II, Varpaline crystals were extremely hard and dense, and therefore could be used in industrial machinery for cutting. Blades produced by Varpaline crystals produced a sharp sound when they came into contact with objects, and could cut through some of the thickest or toughest objects even more easily than other blades. Zophis Crystal. Before the Jedi traveled to Ilum during the Gathering to retrieve their crystals, they went to the world Zoph. However, as Ilum and its crystals became more prominent, Zophis crystals became more rare. It didn't help that the planet also fell to the Separatists during the Clone Wars. Jedi who used Zophis crystals discovered that the produced blade had devastating and unstable properties. Ankari's Sapphire. A gemstone known for its blue hue, the Ankari's crystal possessed legendary healing powers and numerous other effects. Jedi Master Elzar Mann was familiar with them and may have used one himself. Lava Crystal. A lava crystal was a lightsaber crystal that could only be found on volcanic planets and moons such as the hellish world Mustafar. The crystal generated a blade that resembled, you guessed it, lava. It was less focused and concentrated than normal kyber crystals. Therefore, lava itself was generated from the extreme heat of the dense, heavy blade, creating bits of flame and lava that often splashed and dripped out from the blade itself. But that about does it for every lightsaber crystal, at least the ones recognized in canon. Some of the Legends ones get pretty out there, but maybe that'll be a future video topic.
Lightsabers are cool. Even if you're not a hardcore Star Wars fan, you probably want one, and that's okay. There's something that everyone loves about a blazing sword made of pure energy that the Jedi and Sith wield to have epic fights at the conclusion of nearly every Star Wars movie. And chances are, if you want one, you've probably decided on the blade color you'd choose. But did you know that the various lightsaber colors each carry their own respective meanings? The various colors can in fact tell you a lot about the Force users who wield them. As the canon of the universe has expanded, shrunk down, changed, and adapted, so has the lore behind the legendary weapons. There once was a time where we had all kinds of light-based weapons, from broadswords to light whips to lances and pikes, and of course, the humble lightsaber. But before that, there were only two colors, red and blue. Nowadays, there's canon and legends, which often contradict one another. Today, we'll do our best to navigate them both and explain the meanings of the various lightsaber blade colors. So, let's dive in. In the heart of every lightsaber lies a kyber crystal, the source of the blade and thus its color. As a part of Jedi training, younglings were sent to the crystal cave of the ice planet Ilum to seek out their own kyber crystals. A lightsaber's color is determined the moment the user harvests it from its resting place. So in essence, a lightsaber's color reveals something about its wielder and their connection to the Force, even more so in Star Wars Legends. Beginning with blue, the original and most common color among the Jedi, wielded by the likes of Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Plo Koon, Kanan Jarrus, and many more. Blue lightsabers are said to represent loyalty, stability, truth, justice, righteousness, and bravery, mostly by association of what the Jedi stand for, as well as the user's strong spiritual alignment with the crystal. In Legends, blue lightsabers were wielded by Jedi Guardians. This was one of 3 distinctions within the Order. Jedi Guardians focused most on combat and protection. After blue, green is unquestionably the next most common color within the Jedi Order. Green lightsabers were used by Jedi like Luke Skywalker, Yoda, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Ahsoka Tano. Green lightsabers represent growth, safety, harmony, helpfulness, cooperation, spirituality, and demonstrable goodwill, being commonly used by wiser and more senior Jedi. In Legends, green lightsabers were used by the second distinction of Jedi, the Jedi Consulars. A Jedi Consular is a Jedi more devoted to the mental aspects of the Force than lightsaber combat. These deep thinkers and philosophers tend to study the greater inner workings of the Force. Behind the scenes, green lightsabers almost didn't exist. Luke Skywalker was meant to still have a blue lightsaber in Return of the Jedi. He can even be seen with it in much of the promotional material for the movie. The change was made during filming, as the crew realized that the blue blade didn't look right during the battle on Jabba's sail barge. When shot in daylight, the blue would blend in with the color of the sky, so George Lucas and his crew decided to make the change, giving us the first green lightsaber in Star Wars. Red lightsabers are used by the Sith and other Darksiders, from Sidious to Vader to Count Dooku, Maul, Kylo Ren, the list goes on. Red lightsabers represent power, aggression, anger, hatred, malice, and domination. In Legends, Sith crystals are actually synthetic and not natural like the ones the Jedi use. In canon, a Sith will channel their negative emotions, turning a Kyber crystal red in a process known as bleeding. Kylo Ren's is slightly different. During its bleeding process, his crystal became cracked and unstable. The design required it to have lateral vents on either side of the handle in order to divert the extra heat generated by the crystal. Purple lightsabers were wielded by the likes of Mace Windu, Revan, and Mara Jade Skywalker. Purple lightsabers are rare and typically used by Jedi who have a strong connection to both the light and dark sides of the Force, tiptoeing the line ever so closely. They represent nobility, wisdom, and a balance between the two sides. Purple lightsabers exist all thanks to Samuel L. Jackson, who personally asked George Lucas for one in Attack of the Clones.
Oh, well, good guys are green and blue, bad guys are red. That's just the way it works.
No purple left?
You might get purple.
Without the legend himself, we'd never even have the purple lightsaber to have an in-universe lore explanation to go with it. Yellow lightsabers, like purple, are certainly more rare among the Jedi, wielded by Asajj Ventress, Rey, Bastila Shan, the Jedi Temple Guards, and at one point, Luke Skywalker. They were said to represent goodness, warmth, and energy. We don't know much about them in canon, given their rarity, but could learn more in projects like the Acolyte or New Jedi Order movie. In Legends, however, they were associated with the final of the 3 classes of Jedi, the Jedi Sentinels. Sentinels blended both schools of teaching and amplified them with a series of non-force skills, such as in the fields of security, computers, stealth techniques, demolitions, repair, or medicine. These skills tended to take a forefront in their middle road approach to problems. White lightsabers are also incredibly rare, most famously used by Ahsoka Tano after the Clone Wars. They were said to represent purity, redemption, and the ability to overcome the dark side. A white lightsaber crystal was created by taking a bleeding red Sith one and purifying it through the Force. Ahsoka did this with the 6th brother Inquisitor's lightsaber after defeating him on the moon of Rada. She continues to wield her 2 white lightsabers through Rebels, and now at the time of The Mandalorian and her own spin-off show. There is one known black lightsaber in the galaxy, the Mandalorian Darksaber. This weapon was created by the only Mandalorian to be inducted into the Jedi Order, Tar Vizsla. It was also used by his descendant, Pre Vizsla, Darth Maul, Sabine Wren, Bo-Katan Kryze, Moff Gideon, and Din Djarin. As such, the Darksaber's meaning is far more relevant in Mandalorian culture than it is to the Jedi Order. To Mandalorians, the Darksaber was a symbol of leadership and represented strength, honor, and tradition. Its crystal was likely ancient and more unique than any other, given its sharp shape and instability. Orange lightsabers are a very new thing to canon, appearing in the teaser trailers for Ahsoka, being used by Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati, two Order 66 survivors now in service to Grand Admiral Thrawn. Some viewers believed these lightsabers were a different shade of red, but showrunner Dave Filoni confirmed that they were in fact orange. Our best guess is that orange lightsabers were similar to purple, perhaps for Sith who were closer to the light side than others, but that's just a complete shot in the dark. Orange blades were present in Legends and were said to be used by Jedi who have a strong sense of individuality and are often depicted as being independent or unconventional. They represent creativity, confidence, and self-reliance. These Jedi included Yaddle and Plo Koon in various comics, but this was before George Lucas had established much of the rules pertaining to the weapons. 3 more colors exist within the Star Wars Jedi games, those being cyan, indigo, and magenta. Their inclusion in the game does make them canon, but it's more for the player to have additional customization options for their Cal Kestis. Not much is known about any in-universe significance of these colors or what they mean for their wielders. Cyan and indigo seem to be derivatives of the standard blue lightsaber, whereas magenta is somewhat reminiscent of Mace Windu's purple blade. But which lightsaber color is your favorite? Which would you choose to wield as a Sith or a Jedi? Let me know your choice and what you think of its in-universe explanation down in the comments.
As seasoned fans may know, the Jedi Order has long been revered for their mastery of 6 out of the 7 classic forms of lightsaber combat, those being Shicho, Makashi, Sarisu, Ataru, Shigin Gemso, and Nieman. Each was carefully honed to enhance one's combat skills and preserve peace in the galaxy. Some forms were better suited to single combat, while others relied on acrobatics or a strong defense whilst waiting for an opening. However, in the shadows of Jedi lore lay a select few enigmatic and seldom discussed forms, shrouded in mystery and considered forbidden by the Jedi for various reasons. In this installment and sequel to our popular explainer on the classic lightsaber combat forms, we dare to unveil the secrets behind the forbidden lightsaber forms, exploring their origins, techniques, and the rare individuals who dared to embrace their power. Created by a Jedi consular in the days of the Old Republic to compensate for weakness with using a lightsaber, Trakata was a form of lightsaber combat developed for taking advantage of a lightsaber's ability to be turned on and off, a unique quality in a melee weapon. Quickly shutting off then reigniting the blade could confuse one's opponent, allowing a user to take advantage. Trakata was extremely effective even against multiple opponents. Philosophically, Trakata involved practical combat and deception rather than single-minded determination or endless patience. However, this method was greatly frowned upon and was almost never used by either the Sith or the Jedi. The Sith's power came from passion rather than practicality. They claimed that Trakata showed weakness and demonstrated a lack of power. Neither was it commonly used by the Jedi because of their unwillingness to rely on deception. The Jedi saw this form as unsportsmanlike. However, they may have utilized this technique on occasion, their purpose usually being to exert greater influence over the Force. There are 3 main moves or maneuvers which typically are labeled as Trakata, the first of which was known as Pass the Blade. The duelist would deactivate their blade as they attack, bypassing the opponent's block before igniting it into the helpless foe. Secondly was Unbalancing Block, wherein the duelist caught the opponent's blade with their own before momentarily deactivating it, causing the opponent to stumble and leave themselves open. Finally was Flash Slash. This was the activation of the duelist's blade for only a moment, allowing just enough time for the blade to reach full length while being swung, and then deactivated again. There are only 6 known uses of Trakata as of now within canon and legends, with most of them being unspecified. Jedi Master Ko Sin Darch employed this or a similar technique to great effect during his fight with the Sith Lord Vindican and his apprentice Malgus. Members of the New Jedi Order were known to employ Trakata techniques, such as Jedi Master Mara Jade Skywalker. Jedi Master Corran Horn used a variant of this technique during the Yuzong Vong War, one notable occurrence being while he was battling Shidao Sher on Ethor. During the battle, Horn and Shai were locked in combat, and Horn deactivated his lightsaber, then reignited it into Shido Shai, killing the temporary Supreme Commander. During her duel with Ben Skywalker, Sith apprentice Tahiri Vela used this technique to great effect. Skywalker forced her lightsaber aside, so Tahiri switched her lightsaber off and on so fast Skywalker barely had time to react, allowing her to extend the blade to where his throat had been just moments before. In Jedi Fallen Order, Cal Kestis uses Turkata against the second sister Inquisitor, deactivating his blade when the two are locked up, causing her momentum to carry her forward, leaving the fallen Jedi open to a powerful Force push. The move also appeared in an episode of Star Wars Visions during the duel between Tajan Crosser and the Elder. The second of the forbidden lightsaber forms is actually the seventh of the classic forms. Form 7, also known as Juyo, the Way of the Vornsker, or the Ferocity form, was the seventh of 7 forms recognized by the Last Jedi Council of the Old Jedi Order. In use, the Juyo incarnation of Form 7 was described as the most vicious form of lightsaber combat, and was said to involve a significant internal focus on the part of the user, due to its relatively high focus on one's internal emotions to gain dominance in combat. Form 7 oscillated from simply being looked down upon to outright being seen as a taboo. As such, knowledge of Form 7 became restricted among the Jedi Order, and its use was outright banned. The Jedi were rightfully worried that its precepts would lead practitioners towards the dark side. Many Jedi felt that Juyo violated the "there is no emotion, there is peace" tenet of the Jedi Code due to its requirement to fight under the guidance of controlled passion. As the most vicious form of lightsaber combat, Juyo was said to be filled with both fury and malignant grace. The form was given the title of the most difficult and demanding form in all of lightsaber combat. Skilled combatants with Juyo were said by Jedi Master Vrook Lamar to be able to eviscerate a lone army. In fact, it was designed for such a purpose in one-on-one lightsaber duels. According to the Sith Lord Darth Treya, the form was both chaotic and erratic, with a heavy focus on offense and using techniques believed to have been rejected from Shicho in the earliest days of the Jedi Order. Singe Rayleigh, the Jedi Temple Battlemaster before the Great Purge, listed bold, direct motions as characteristics of Juyo, qualifying them as more open and kinetic than Form 5, the form used by Jedi like Anakin Skywalker, but Juyo had a far less elaborate appearance. Drelake contrasted the tactics of Juyo as not nearly as graceful or linked as those of Ataru. Juyo was said to necessitate greater energy than Form 5 due to a brighter wielding of a user's focus and a deeper emotional link. Despite the challenges inherent in using Juyo, it could serve as a pathway to considerable power for those who embraced it. And it did just that for Darth Sidious, perhaps the form's true master, who went as far as labeling Juyo as a Sith form. While the Jedi banned Juyo's use, the Sith did not have such reservations about guiding a form which used controlled passion, with the Sith code directly reading, "Peace is a lie, there is only passion. Through passion I gain strength, through strength I gain power, through power I gain victory." Sidious's mastery of Juyo was great enough to train Darth Maul in its use. Maul's inner aggression complemented his use of the form, and he used it as his primary method of lightsaber combat, drawing heavily on the dark side to gain the ability to overwhelm opponents through sheer ferocity. His most notable usage of the form was when battling Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi on Naboo. Maul showed the ability to adapt Juyo into the use of a double-bladed lightsaber. His use of the form was enough for him to fight both highly skilled Jedi at once, despite Juyo's weakness to fight multiple foes. When he separated the pair and engaged them one-on-one, Maul quickly broke through Qui-Gon Jinn's defenses, allowing him to slay the Jedi Master. By the Clone Wars, his skill could even overwhelm the defenses of Obi-Wan Kenobi, one of the greatest masters of the defensive form Surisu. In the later days of the Galactic Republic, a new variation of Form 7, dubbed Vaapad, after a creature native to the planet Serapin, was created by Jedi Masters Mace Windu and Sora Bulk. Windu stated that Vaapad was an answer for his own weakness, allowing him to channel his own inner darkness into something positive. Vaapad was described as more than a fighting style. It was a state of mind that led through the penumbra of the dark side, requiring the user to enjoy the fight and relish the satisfaction of winning. The practitioner of Vaapad would accept the fury of their opponent, transforming themselves into one half of a superconducting loop, with the other half being the power of darkness inherent in the opponent. The form was also mentioned with a cautionary warning by the Jedi that the use of Vapad led the user perilously close to the dark side due to its focus on physical combat. Vapad required a constant and sizable stream of force use from the user. The form's attacks appeared to be unconnected, its motion seemingly unpolished to an untrained observer. Vapad users appeared to wield many lightsabers at once, moving too fast to see, just as the Vapad creature would attack with blindingly fast tentacles that were too impossible to count until the creature was dead. A Vapad user's attacks would flow into each other with liquid precision, creating the constant near-invisible weave of energy. It was also possible to apply Vapad in unarmed combat, with the user's arms becoming too fast to see, as well as in the use of dual lightsabers. After his fall to the dark side, but before the Clone Wars, Count Dooku described the power of Vapad as skirting the dark side of the Force, but stating during a duel with Sora Bulk that the form was brittled and weak without direct use of the dark side, with Dooku later subverting Bulk to his cause. After Bulk fell to the dark side, he claimed that he had perfected the form, which Windu disputed while engaging Bulk in a lightsaber duel. While Bulk had previously practiced Vapad with Windu, he was unable to defeat him in single combat. Because of how close Vapad tiptoed along the lines of the dark side, Windu forbid other Jedi from practicing the form without his direct permission, something that he had only given to his own apprentice, Depa Billaba. One such Jedi who was directly discouraged from using the form was Quinlan Vos, who Windu felt was already perilously close to the dark side. Windu wielded the form in numerous battles, especially in the Geonosis arena against the bounty hunter Jango Fett, where his relentless use of Vapad overpowered him. To combat Darth Sidious's Juyo technique, Windu gave himself entirely over to Vapad during their duel. He allowed it to fully channel his inner darkness and accept and use Sidious's darkness against him. When fully immersed in this form, Windu's fighting prowess was such that he could allow his body to fight automatically for him without needing to direct it with his mind. Sidious's own fury was used and redirected by Windu via the use of Vapad, a process which Windu mentally linked to a lightsaber deflecting a blaster bolt back at its source. After Windu disarmed Sidious, the Sith Lord attempted to blast him with Force Lightning, but Windu responded by once more employing Vapad techniques to channel the dark power of the lightning through him without it affecting him, and then redirected it back to its source. However, Windu believed that his use of Vapad alone was insufficient to defeat Sidious, as he felt it would only result in an indefinite stalemate. While observing the duel between the two, Anakin Skywalker considered Windu's Vapad blade work to be an oblate sphere of purple fire, which contained dozens of blades attacking from every angle. But which of the forbidden lightsaber forms is your favorite? Which would you dare to practice if you were a Jedi Knight or Sith Lord? Let me know in the comments below.